Georgia, Mr. Scott is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair Lady. We need to put a stop right now on FASB's ruling in terms of CECL. This ruling is absolutely devastating to our smaller banks, without question, and our credit unions. The larger banks don't have to worry about it. They've got the capital. Now, I've been on this issue for quite some time. In December, I even brought up the issue of comparability. As you know, CECL does not prescribe to the use of specific methods to estimate loss allowances. And what this does, it allows these banks to be able to use their own judgment in developing methods that are appropriate and practical under those circumstances. And this is done to allow these banks who are smaller to have flexibility, and I agree we need to respond to that. But here is the situation. It brings into this a conflict, an inherent conflict. And I want Chair Lady McWilliams and Chairman Hood, if you would explain to us, how do you balance flexibility against comparability? Meaning, how can you ensure the judgment banks use in developing their methods does not impede upon the ability of regulators like yourselves and investors to compare the health of the banks across the industry, and will not limit the smaller banks and credit unions from being able to make loans? If they can't lend, they go out of business. Ms. McWilliams.
Certainly, it's a great question, Congressman, and I have to tell you, I met with an MDI in California, which was one of the last MDIs de novo granted before the crisis, and they said, looking at historic losses, we don't have that data. We will actually have to borrow data from our peers to estimate. So it highlighted for me the issue of how complicated this is going to be for some of the smaller banks, especially the ones that don't have a long history, to do exactly what FASB is asking them to do.
And that's why, you know, there are times, FASB's got wonderful people there, but they're off target here. This thing is very devastating. The smaller community banks, our credit unions, they're the ones, they're the backbone of our towns and our cities, communities, not the larger banks, the JP Morgans, the Goldman Sachs. It's not going to affect them, but it will put our credit unions and our small banks out of business. Mr. Hood.
Yes, sir, I share that very same concern. We as a agency, we regulate currently 529 MDIs. I would like to see them continue. As I mentioned in my opening statement, I will be presenting a new de novo minority depository institution with a new credit union charter just on Monday of next week. I want to make sure it has the resources to succeed, but in this age of what's taking place with CECL, it does keep me up at night, and it's going to take a lot of research and studying with all the stakeholders such as you and others to really make sure our communities don't suffer.
Well, that's great. I hope Chair Lady Waters that if necessary, we may need to pass legislation or something to put a stop to this. Mr. Ottinger, good to have you with us, and appreciate you and I sitting together over the last couple of years, I believe, and in your appointment, and concerning the fintechs. And we have discussed our FinTech Act. It's a bipartisan act that myself and Congressman Barry Loudermilk are working on, and it deals with the regulation there. It would be good if you could tell us the status. The last we heard was that you're extending a special order to the fintechs for regulation. Can you bring us up to date on the status of that special order?
Sure, Congressman. Thank you very much. Well, first of all, we think the ability to bring new concepts and choices for consumers are important to the future of banking. what we found is a big part of the small ticket consumer and small business lending is being done by the internet. And a lot of those entities want the ability to operate across a national platform to bring those services. So what started under Comptroller Curry in 2015 was a way, could we create a national banking charter to allow those entities to be regulated, to be supervised, to have capital and liquidity and risk management like other banks? And so we went through that journey, and last year we announced that we would consider to take applications for a national bank fintech or a special purpose.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from
Thank you.